We're back. We're hanging out with you on this Friday. We are Sports Take. I am Rob Ellis. He is Bill Colarulo. That is Tone DeShields, D-Gun, off today. He'll be back on Monday. All right, guys, let's continue with the roster battle, and let's look specifically on the defensive side. Now, there's two spots I think we'd all agree with that, at least from a starting standpoint, you had positions up in the air going in, and they're still not guaranteed. Let's start with linebacker. Nakobe Dean is a lock. That much we know in the middle. That's a lock. I'm not going to count Hassan Reddick as an edge guy. We'll get couple the edge with the defensive ends. But let's go to the weak side. Are we looking at Zach Cunningham? Are we looking at Christian Ellis? Are we looking at Nicholas Morrow? I thought it was interesting last night that neither Dean, that's not a surprise, but Zach Cunningham did not dress. How do we see that other starting spot? Let's begin there.
Yeah, I think they tipped their hand last night by not dressing Zach Cunningham. I think he's going to be your weak side linebacker. And I like that. I don't like that he just signed here a couple weeks ago, but I do like that they're putting some experience there. The guy started over 80 games in his career, which I think is good when you're putting him next to Nakobe Dean, who's only played 34 snaps. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Christian Ellis continue to work his way into that role. When he's flying around the field, you love to see it. He plays with a lot of speed. He just needs to learn the position a little bit better. But I think you're going to go into this season with Dean and Cunningham. I think Christian Ellis will make the team as well. And do they keep 4 linebackers? If they keep 4 linebackers, I think Nick Morrow makes the team also. But that's a question mark. Maybe they only keep 3.
I think Morrow's the guy on the hot seat here, Tone, because Ellis gives you so much special teams-wise. Cunningham seems like the veteran fit with the size for Nakobe, who's inexperienced and a little bit smaller. How do you view it?
Yeah, when I look at this linebacker position, very, very up in the air, like you guys said. I mean, Nakobe Dean seems to be the only guy that we know it's a lock. I think Zach Cunningham is a lock as well. I think we all can agree on that. And I do agree with Bill wholeheartedly, the fact that I believe you're going to need some experience next to Nakobe Dean. I was of the mindset that the perfect transition for Nakobe Dean would be to either strong side or weak side linebacker, and he plays next to TJ Edwards. That was my perfect situation, but obviously we know how that panned out. So I think it's going to be really important for Nakobe Dean to take some of that pressure off him with a guy like Zach Cunningham. I'm really curious to see how this team views Nicholas Morrow. He didn't have a bad preseason. I know he didn't really flash, but he was kind of steady. He didn't turn himself into a liability. He wasn't bad. He wasn't extraordinary. He was just okay. He was decent. So I'm curious to see how those guys look at a guy like Nicholas Morrow. And then Christian Ellis, I think he's going to make this team for the simple fact that he's just a special teams phenom. Like, he just plays special teams with a reckless abandon. He loves to tackle. He loves the game. And I'm curious to see if he can actually jump or leap a guy like Nicholas Morrow. But I think the locks for this roster when it comes to the linebacker position are definitely Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, and Christian Ellis. Nicholas Morrow, I'm still unsure about.
Yeah, I think it depends how much you want to lean towards some, a veteran here. Like, I don't think there's any doubt it's going to be Cunningham as the other starter. And Ellis has done too much. He's made too much of an impact on special teams, and especially early in camp at that linebacker spot. So I think those guys are here. It just depends. I mean, are you going to keep 4 here, and not counting the edge guys? And that's really what it comes down to. And none of Morrow's money's guaranteed. So that's always got to be taken into account. Let's jump over to safety here. And, again, Reed Blankenship, you've seen, 2 out of the 3 games in the preseason he hasn't dressed. And he's had a very good camp as well. So we know that much. Let's go to the guy next to him, who we think it's going to be. There are some that believe it's going to be Sidney Brown. There are some that believe they'll stay with the veteran and I'm going to go along the same lines I just went with the linebackers. I think they like Edmonds enough with the experience, at least to start the season. Not necessarily, staying that way all year, but at least to start the season. I think it's going to be Edmonds. But how do you guys see the safety in terms of starters playing itself out? You have others, Kayvon Wallace, Justin Evans, et cetera. How do you guys see that? Bill?
Yeah, I think they keep all 5 of those guys, Blankenship, Brown, Edmonds, Evans, and Kayvon Wallace. But I think you're right. I think the starter, at least to begin the season, is going to be Terrell Edmonds. And like I said earlier, I like looking at their actions, not necessarily what they say. And you look at who played the least last night, and it was Terrell Edmonds.
Yeah.
They gave Sidney Brown a lot of reps, Kevon Wallace playing into the fourth quarter there. So I think you're going to see Terrell Edmonds again. He's not going to be a real flashy player. You're probably not going to see him make a lot of big plays, but hopefully he doesn't make a lot of mistakes either. He started a lot of games in this league for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think at least to start the year, you'll see Edmonds there. You know, some people have the mindset, throw Sidney Brown in early because that's the easiest part of your schedule and have him learn. But I think they'll use practice to hopefully get him up to speed. And I'm hoping Sidney Brown can contribute on that special teams unit too that struggled last year.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. Go ahead,
Bill. It's so funny. I always go back and forth about that second safety position next to Reed Blankenship. And for all the reasons you brought up, Bill, the fact that, okay, if you go with Sidney Brown, you're just throwing him to the wolves and you're kind of looking at it like, well, this is the easier part of my schedule. If I'm going to get him acclimated to the NFL speed, this is going to be the perfect time. But then you go on the other side and say, well, even though he's a talented kid, he's very raw, lacks the experience, sometimes plays the game a little bit reckless. That's where a guy like Terrell Edmonds comes in, and he brings a veteran force, a stable force in that safety position. He's more of a box safety though. Started 75 total games for the Steelers. He played for a very respectful organization, a well-respected head coach, Mike Tomlin. Even though he played 5 seasons there, they didn't bring him back. That's okay though. Sometimes it's a numbers game, and he's a guy that knows how to get. He knows how to get to the player. He gets a lot of tackles. He's gotten sacks. He's gotten interceptions. So he moves around all over the field. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they use him. But I think you guys are ultimately going to be right. Like Bill said, they kind of showed their hand a little bit by not playing Terrell Edmonds that much in the preseason, if at all. So I think the season most likely will start out with Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds. Maybe they're looking at it like we don't want to have 2 young guys back there. So I can't really argue with that mindset.
Yeah, I know they like Evans a lot, so that's also something to keep in mind. Again, a lot of this comes down to how many of these guys can play well on special teams, and that was an area last year that, at least until they made some of the adjustments later. I know it bit them in the Super Bowl too, but until they brought up a Christian Ellis and some other guys, special teams, even the coverage units. I mean, the only, let's face it, guys, the only thing you really go into this season from a special team standpoint confident in is Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott's a beast, but everything else worries you. I mean, I know we've debated this and we've had a lot of fun with this, but it's going to be Sippos. Like we had EJ Smith on yesterday from the Inquirer, and I know I'm obsessed with this. Tell him knows this.
Oh, it kills you. It kills you. It's so funny watching you behind the scenes because I can just see it in your face how much it bothers you.
The guy drives me nuts. But EJ said he doesn't think the Eagles punter's on the roster. I hope EJ's right. I think he is on the roster, and I think they're going to go with Sippos. I hope I'm wrong.
I mean, look, it's only August 25th. Howie Roseman has done a lot.
That's true.
At the final hour. I mean, August 30th, he brought in Sidney Gardner-Johnson, and we saw how that panned out in the grand scheme of things. There's so much time left. There's going to be so many cuts going on. The punter may not be on this roster, Rob. It's okay. You gotta hold out hope.
Your lips to the sports God's ears, dude. Okay, I'm praying. See the fingers? I have toes crossed. I have body parts crossed. I can't.
Don't stop believing.
I got bad news for you, Rob, because again, like I said, I like to look at their actions. Last night, first quarter, 4th and 2 from the Indianapolis 47. Would have been nice to see Aaron Sippos try to pin a punt inside the 10.
Instead, they went for it.
That's
so I think they've already made the decision that Sippos is your punter this year.
That's a good point. I didn't think about it like that because, but that's a really good point you brought up, Bill, because there were many situations where I was thinking to myself, how come they're not putting it there?
I mean, either that or it's just like, this is who we are. This is our personality, and we're not changing anything, like in terms of the aggression. But no, you're right, Bill. I mean, I that's my biggest issue with him. Well, I have a lot of issues with him, but one of them is he's not a good pooch punter. He's not a good, I don't want to obsess over this, so I will move on. But he does not drop the ball inside of the 10 well enough. I know, listen, this is the last thing I'm going to say, I promise. But I get it. Like on the priority list, it's further down. I understand that. But we saw what happened in the Super Bowl. And they're going to be playing closer games this year, whereas punts are going to be more important. Okay, I'm done. I'll move on. I promise.
Oh, man, that was fun.
All right, let's go. Eli Ricks. Did Eli Ricks make this team? I believe yes, he did. I think he's shown so much in this off season, in this preseason, that I think he has made himself the squad. The rookie out of Bama, LSU and Bama is his background. But what do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I think if McPherson doesn't go down, Eli Ricks probably doesn't make this team.
Agreed,
but
100%.
I think they keep 6 corners. So you have Bradbury, Slay, Avonte Maddox, Keely Ringo's a definite because he was drafted this year, and you have Josh Jobe. So then it leaves one more guy. It comes down to Mario Goodrick or Eli Ricks. And I just think Eli Ricks showed us enough in preseason battling against #1 receiver. And he really fight. I love his attitude. I love the way he plays. So I think he's done enough to make this team. And again, hopefully he's a guy who can help out this special teams unit that struggled all year last year.
Yeah, Tone, I like what I see here, man. I think this guy, he kind of got in Saban's doghouse a little bit, which hurt him.
Yeah.
But you can just see it. And he was going against, like the big boys last night for them, at least early. And I thought he played very well. I think he's been one of the standouts for me of the guys who are kind of unknown a little bit.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I'm definitely an Eli Ricks guy for sure. But I think this is the part this is the player that we may have forgotten about, that the Eagles, for some reason, always find a way to get him on the roster. Josiah Scott.
Oh, big time.
He's a guy that provides them with a bit of versatility. He can play the nickel. It's times where he had to play outside. Not very well, but there's moments where he had to play outside. There's moments where he played the safety. He kind of provides them with a lot of versatility. But if they do keep as many safeties as we think they're going to keep, then I think Eli Ricks has the pole position ahead of Josiah Scott. If I had to go with my corners, obviously D. Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, and then you got Josh Jobe, Keely Ringo. They drafted him, so he's going to be on the roster.
Oh, he is.
And then Eli Ricks.
That's where you get into this numbers crunch, guys. So, I mean, look, we know the locks, right? Slay, Blankenship, Maddox, locks. Ringo drafted where he was drafted, even though he hasn't shown much. And, and Sherry, says doubt they put Ringo on the practice squad.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
They're not, Sherry. Yeah. So, and I know she was saying it jokingly, but Ringo's going to be here. And then it comes down to Kayvon Wallace, who can play special teams. It comes down to Justin Evans, who they like a lot. I know I'm jumping around with safety and corner here, but it is going to be interesting there. But Jobe's been really good too. So yeah. Josiah Scott, it's going to be interesting what happens there with him.
Where are you guys on Kayvon Wallace? I was high on him early on, and every year
thought he was going to be way better than he's been.
Yeah. So where are you guys on him today? I mean, he says he's rededicated himself to his body and rededicated himself to the technique. He's invested more resources into his body than he's ever had before. He's got a lot of playing time in his preseason. So where do you guys see a guy like Kayvon Wallace falling? Do you think he makes this roster, or do you think he's going to be a practice squad guy? Do you think they want him on the special teams because he has the experience there above certain guys? Where do you guys stand with Kayvon Wallace, Bill?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think he makes the team because they're going to keep 4 safeties, and I think he'll be one of those 4. But he's a guy who's now had an opportunity year after year to take this safety position and run with it, and he just hasn't been able to do it. So I don't have any confidence in him as a starting safety on this team. But again, the common theme, if he can play special teams, I think that's where you'll see mostly him get playing time. But, I mean, last year, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson goes down. They don't turn to Kayvon Wallace. They turn to the undrafted rookie, Reed Blankenship. And again, this year,
very good point,
with the question marks next to Reed, he can't win that position. So I don't have confidence in him as a starting safety.
I don't either. I said, I expected a lot more of him coming out. Now, if they feel like, hey, this guy's too dependable for us, again, on the special teams unit, he's here. If not, I'm not losing any sleep if he's not here. I'm not.
Neither am I. So,
all right, but I want to get back to the safety thing. So, at what point, if we don't believe that Sidney Brown starts the year, at what point do you think we see him starting? And do we see him starting?
See, it's so okay. Like I think this is a part or the moment where we really have to think about this Philadelphia Eagles schedule, because I'm trying to think where or when they would fit him in terms of allowing him to start. I mean, okay, you start out with the Patriots, then you got Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Washington, Los Angeles, and then you got the Jets, Miami, Washington, Dallas. Then you got your bye. If they're thinking of starting him after the bye, you're putting a lot of pressure on him to deal with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and then he has to deal with the San Francisco 49ers. We don't know what the quarterback position is going to look like. But if they do start him, I mean, I think if you don't start him in week 1, the best window of opportunity for him to start is going to have to be week 8 where they face Washington. And then he has the Dallas game in week 9. Then he has the bye week to regroup. And then he comes back week 11 against Kansas City.
Yeah, I think one of the things we saw at some points during training camp in the preseason was a little bit of a 3 safety set at times.
That big nickel, right?
Yep.
So you may see him get some playing time there and then slowly work in getting more and more reps each week, where he may not be the quote unquote starter, but he may get more playing time as the schedule progresses.
Yeah, I don't know that that's not an area too that there's a trade coming. You know, whether it's safety, whether it's linebacker, like Tony, you mentioned earlier, and Bill, it could be punter. I still think that this isn't. I think they love they love Blankenship, but I think safety could be addressed here, where they don't necessarily have to throw Sidney Brown into the fire right away, or even the linebacker spot. I mean, I think they like Zach Cunningham, but I don't know if they love their depth there. Howie very rarely goes through this late period, and we had 16 days or whatever it is, without doing something. So I think some move is coming, and the 3 most likely candidate spots are linebacker, safety, and punter, if it's going to happen. So I just keep your eye on that. I think something could keep in mind how many picks they have for next year, or keep in mind somebody's going to get cut. Cut down day is Tuesday, right? Somebody gets cut, you could see somebody added to the roster, even if it's not a trade, to give you a little bit more depth. So just watch out. Like they will do some weird roster maneuvering, like the what is the Fred Johnson thing, right? The offensive lineman who they cut and then they signed to a 2-year deal, who looks like he's a lock to make the team now. So there's some strange maneuvering that you could see. So I wouldn't put it past them.
Absolutely.
With a guy who's as aggressive as Howie Roseman, that's for sure. I think you could see something happening there. All right, defensive line. Let's go edge first, then we'll work to the defensive line.
Okay.
All right, your locks: Reddick, Sweat, BG, Nolan Smith. Is Derek Barnett on this team? Let's start there.
Yeah,
he is.
I think Barnett's also a lock to make this squad. I think once they restructured him this offseason, it was a guarantee that he was coming back. I think that's your 5 edges right there. Do they keep 6 and bring back Teron Jackson? Maybe, but I don't think so. I think you have 5 really good. Well, let me say 4 really good edges, and then you have Derek Barnett, who I don't have confidence in him either, but we'll see if he can contribute at all this year.
Yeah,
I think he's here, by the way. I think he's 100% here, and I know Eagles fans aren't going to like that, but I do. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. I mean, it's going to be Brandon Graham. It's going to be Hassan Reddick. It's going to be Nolan Smith. It's going to be Josh Sweat. Derek Barnett is going to be here, man. I mean, see, the sad thing about Derek Barnett, when we talk about him, it's never really about skill set or talent, right? It's always about his decision making. It's always about how composed he is. And this Philadelphia Eagles team, where they set themselves apart from many teams last season was their composure and their ability to limit the mistakes, their ability to limit situations where they're taking loss of yardage because of mental errors. They did a really good job limiting those kind of mistakes.
Yep.
But a guy like Derek Barnett, again, this is not about his skill set, but when you have more penalties than you do sacks in your career, that makes me nervous.
Yeah, and not to mention time missed. He's been injured quite a bit, and you can't really fault him for that. But that's also a factor that you have to take into account when you're dealing with him. I guess, does that make Kyron and Patrick Johnson on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I think Kyron and Patrick Johnson end up on the practice squad. I mean, also remember Patrick had that injury during training camp. Yep. So I just have a hard time believing Patrick or Kyron. And I'm a Kyron Johnson fan. I think he's a really athletic, a very raw talent that can be refined. But yeah, I think Patrick Johnson and Kyron Johnson are on the outs.
Okay. Let's go D-line. Let's go interior and look at this thing from the inside here. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, locks. There's 4 right there.
Right.
Tui Pelotu, Cantavius Street, Moro Ajomo, and I know he's been banged up. Am I missing anybody here? Keep all of those bodies?
Marvin Wilson, I mean, Robert Cooper. I mean, yeah, I think you pretty much said it. And Bill, what do you think? I mean, I think I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Kentavious Street and Marlon Tuipulotu, even more Ojomo. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I think this is a position where they may keep 6 or 7 guys. And you look at, I always say his name wrong, Tuipulotu.
Tuipulotu.
Yeah. He's really your backup nose tackle. So I think he makes this team as a lock. And then it comes down to do they keep Ojomo or Kentavious Street? And interestingly, Street doesn't dress last night, which I thought was shocking that he didn't dress.
It's a good sign for him.
A really good sign for him. Now, Ojomo has that concussion. So when you were talking earlier about do they do something with this roster, there's a lot of maneuvering to do. Does Ojomo make the 53 and then they immediately put him on IR for that concussion? They don't want to do it before they get down the final cuts because I think then he has to miss the whole season. I think the way that works. So Ojomo will probably make the roster. Then they can maybe move him to IR. Can they slide Kentavious Street through similar to what they did with Johnson, and then he makes the team? So there'll be some maneuvering there, but I think all 7 of those guys will have some sort of spot on this team.
Okay. Yeah. I think Street is an interesting player because last season for New Orleans, he didn't start. He was a rotational guy, but in the snaps that he did get, if I'm not mistaken, he played a grand total of 518 snaps. So he played 46% of the defensive snaps at defensive tackle for the Saints, and he managed to put up 3.5 sacks and 29 total tackles. So he wasn't a complete liability out there. He made the most of his opportunities, and we know D tackles, they're not known for leading your team in tackles
they're good numbers
or sacks. So so for playing less than 50% of the snaps, I mean 3.5 sacks, 29 tackles, and 8 quarterback hits on top of that, 5 tackles for loss. He was active out there. So I agree with Bill. I think they're going to try to have as much depth on that defensive line as possible.
Okay. All right. We're going to come back. We're going to look at the offensive side. And part of the discussion, we will ask, should the Eagles take a run at Trey Lance and or Jonathan Taylor? We'll get into all of that when we return. Don't go anywhere. That is Bill Colarulo, Legal Hands to the Face. That is Tone to Shields. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because knowing who to trust with your finances is critical. And I was right there for a long time, but I found the right person, and I want you to have that right person as well. Whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, if you have a small business, you're trying to get your employee benefits off the ground and you're not really sure how the best way to go about it, that's another resource that Jim can help you with. Personally, I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollovers with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You can email him as well, Murray, MURRAY.Jim@principal.com.